Chief Sports Network presents The Walkthrough with Joe.
And that will do it. Appreciate you guys joining us for this week's edition of the Rooster Rant. I'm one of your co-hosts, Joe Macheca. Join me, as always, and as will be for the rest of the South Carolina football season, are my other co-hosts, the one, the only Matt Anderson, and the myth, the legend, Alex Jones. Gentlemen, how are we feeling after that Sunday at Williams Brice Stadium? Saturday.
Well, it's Saturday. Alex, I mean, you were up in the press box. I was down in the stadium. I think it started out pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Gamecocks forced a turnover inside the 5 for Old Dominion, and boom, touchdown. But after that, it kind of got a little hairy at Williams Brice.
Yeah, after that first defensive play and then the first touchdown, you wondered, South Carolina going to find a way to run away with this, but was not the case. I'm sure we're going to dive into all of that here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we'll get through all of it, gentlemen. South Carolina narrowly escaping Old Dominion. Wasn't quite how they drew it up, but nonetheless, a win's a win's a win's a, and on to Kentucky. But first off, I mean, guys, offensively and defensively, what were your initial impressions? What first stood out to you the most about this week's game?
Go ahead, Alex. I'll catch up.
Yeah, let's start with offense. I mean, obviously that's the topic everybody's talking about today. The question coming into it was, what was the offensive line improvement going to look like, and have they improved? And, I think that's still going to be a question mark here entering these next few weeks. Like, they got a big test next weekend. There was times where last night they just did not show that they were getting pushed in that run game, which is key with a running back like Rocket Sanders in that running back room. Obviously Norris Sellers had a little bit of an consistent day in his first start, which, you kind of expect a little bit of that with him being in his first start, so you kind of expected a little bit about that. I just don't think he ever got into a rhythm, which kind of hurt his game and I think maybe hurt his confidence just a little bit. But, I'm interested to see what you guys thought and what you guys saw.
With Norris, I don't know if it was game plan related. I really don't know, but it felt like he trusted his legs a lot more than he trusted his wide receivers. You saw Norris had a beautiful, beautiful pass to Jared Brown where, Jared Brown didn't make the catch, and there was an illegal receiver downfield anyway. So kind of like, two bugaboos there, but Norris still has that arm. He showed it off last season, limited action, and again yesterday. So I don't know. I thought that overall the offense, like as cliche as it sounds, was a little vanilla. I don't feel like they actually tried to do much outside of, I think one time Jared got a reverse and he got like 6, 7, 8 yards and they never went back to it. And what you gonna do? I think at that point you just get out of Old Dominion and say, hell with it. We got a dub. Like, we'll figure it out. Go to Kentucky. You usually get better from week 1 to week 2. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I thought one of the more interesting things, you mentioned that play with Jared Brown. I kind of agree maybe a little bit with what you said about it being vanilla. But one thing with the offensive line is I kind of noticed either live or kind of watching back was it seems like they pulled guards a lot more last night. And early on, I think that kind of caught Old Dominion off guard a little bit. You saw some big runs from, Rocket. Lenore's had that, I think it was like a 17-yard run. So I think it caught them off guard a little bit. And then they used it kind of as a counter on that Jared Brown play. When you look at it, the line crashed right. There was guards pulling right, and Jared Brown went left and got 15 yards, but you never saw that play again. So, I think maybe they got a little bit predictable on offense with what they were looking at right in the middle, because it seems like there's a lot of runs right in the middle that Old Dominion kind of just figured out, they're going to really attack this run. And so, I wondered what went on there.
What about you, Jeff?
Absolutely. Offensively for you guys, it starts with the quarterback for sure. I was not expecting Norris to run the ball as much. I think it was, kind of a fresh take on this South Carolina offense. With Dowell Loggins and this RPO stuff, I didn't think it was going to be as run heavy. I mean, maybe for this week because, Old Dominion they're so high tempo on offense in their own right that you wanted to keep the defense, off the field as long as you could. So, I mean, I can see running the ball for that reason, but it was just, different runs, not the runs that you would expect to kind of open up the game a little bit. It was short, little choppy runs. And again, with the quarterback a lot, that's what surprised me the most. Norris is built for it, right? We saw that, his body, coming into this year, he was a little bit bigger wall. So I think he lost some weight going into this season. So he's certainly built to carry the ball 26 times a game. Now, is he built to carry the ball 26 times a game for 12 weeks, right? So I don't know. That's the one thing that surprised me. I understand you're trying to keep the defense off the field, but if you're going to run the ball that much, you got to execute it. And, it seemed like there were just short little chunk plays that, they needed to get to the next step, but then they couldn't take the one after that to get to, the promised land and really string together some drives. So I was impressed with the quarterback. Again, we're getting a lot of comments about the offensive line too, and we'll dissect all that as well. For me at least, I thought the offensive line looked good, not great. I mean, again, it wasn't as bad as North Carolina last year, so you got a little bit of wiggle room there. You're not as far off as that bad, but you certainly have a lot of work to do headed into two. And Kentucky, they rolled their week one opponent. So.
And I thought, kind of going back to what you talking about Lenoris, I thought he looked his best on that third quarter drive where they kind of drove down the field and eventually ended up kicking a field goal because they got backed up in that goal line. But he looked really good in that drive because he had time in the pocket. He stepped into his throws, made some really nice throws on that stretch. I mean, even that ball to Nick Harbor down the sideline, Harbor couldn't get a foot in. But I thought that he looked really comfortable in that drive, and I don't think that was consistent the whole night. And I thought, Rocket had his moments too, but a lot of times he was dodging guys in the background or in the backfield. But, I think I can't remember what his yards was after contact, but it was something crazy. But, I thought he looked I thought Rocket looked really good in the time he was on the field.
I'll take it from there. I really think that Rocket's the best running back the Gamecocks have had over the last 4 or 5 years, in my opinion. I mean, Kevin Harris had a good run, but Rocket made a lot happen. He had 88, 90 total yards, something like that. Probably could have had more. I thought that, he was a guy that was just a couple missed tackles away from breaking off some 40-yard runs. I was impressed with Rocket. That's just me. I thought with Norris, look, I'm still very high on Lenoris Sellers. I don't think that you can judge any quarterback based on, their first game when it's a game like that. I remember at the rain delay or whatever, it was like just into the second quarter. But Lenoris had -3 yards passing on 1 of 5 pass attempts, and he had 11 rushes for 45 yards. Like, I can guarantee you, I don't know what happened. That was not the game plan for Lenoris to be running on 60% of plays he was involved in. Not the game plan.
It would have been good to see him, going back to Rocket, it would have been good to see, what he could do in the screen game too. Because I thought there was one play, I think it was a little bit earlier in the game. It was like a 2nd and 21. They'd gotten backed up, and he got pretty much them back to, serviceable down on 3rd down where they can get it. Which, speaking of that, I think their average 3rd down distance, South Carolina was 3rd and 7 in that game. So, I mean, that's putting a lot on Lenoris Sellers in that 3rd down. And I think the Old Dominion defense has kind of just feasted on that and brought pressure each time.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Rocket looked good. He's certainly not the Rocket of 2022, which we kind of expected, right? It's going to be really hard for him to replicate that. But again, the best back in the running back room. The one thing that I would have expected to see more of was Oscar Attaway, right? Obviously, Lenoris carried it 22 times. So I expected, the quarterback number to be dropped down a little bit and then use the depth that you have in this running back room. I believe Attaway only carried for 4 times, and Juju got involved a couple times as well. But I think that was for me at least, that was the whole purpose of bringing in all these running backs, is because you have the stud Rocket, but then you also have really capable guys in Juju McDowell and Oscar Attaway. So I expected a little bit more out of that.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
I thought Attaway popped on that first carry he got where he busted out to the right, and he looked like he did on my college football 25 game. He looked fast and athletic. And then Juju, I thought, was great in the punt return game, kick return. I thought he's going to make some things happen. Maybe not take one to the house, but he looked like a big pop in that special teams. I think that, I don't know, man. Like, you get to the point where there's a little bit of just working through it with the coaches and the players. And you had a weird situation with that rain delay. That was the weirdest rain delay I've ever been a part of, because, I mean, we left the stadium and it was perfect. And then you come back, and that was right after Juju had a really big run. And kind of, I don't know if Lenoris clipped him or, he got sniped by the grass, but then all of a sudden all momentum was gone, and you come back in. It's like 2 halftimes.
Yeah, and I wonder with Juju, like if maybe Kentucky against Kentucky, that you see him more kind of in the offense with, because a lot of times you saw last night in the game they would kind of motion a guy out to the left but run up the middle, but there was opportunity to kind of kick the ball out to the left, and I think Juju be great in that. And as you mentioned, like he was pretty good in the return game too for what he did. But I'll be really interested to see if that is something that's in the game plan next week.
Yeah. Fully expect him to be, and Alex kind of off in that too. I wanted to add that about the running back room is like there were looks for the running backs to get involved in the passing game. Dowell just didn't use them as much, right? I kind of expected to see more swing passes, more kind of out, and maybe that's the playbook. And he's not opening it up all on week one, which I'm sure it's a little bit of that as well. And I just need to calm down and expect that to come later on in the season, and expect it to be there. But yeah, there's a lot of wrinkles, and I like this comment from Michael too. It's just we needed to see a simpler offense yesterday to beat Old Dominion, as is usually the case for week one games across the country. Is when you simplify it and get the points, it usually turns out in your favor, and a pretty heavy one. Matt, you had something there. I'm sorry.
Oh, you might have touched on it. If not, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Yeah. Word. Well, so Alex, you were talking about special teams. Juju McDowell's special teams looked really good. There was a very big special teams play in this game. It got called back for, but the fake touchdown or the fake field goal that turned into the touchdown, weird play, while it got called back, didn't count, but was still, I guess a highlight. There were Shane mentioned in his post game presser that it was planned jump. Hunter Beamer was in on it at least. So what did you guys think of the fake?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was, Shane said, going in, he had seen something on film, or they had seen something on film that they're getting on the left hash for a field goal. They were going to run it. I'm not sure who the illegal man downfield ended up being on the play. I think it was one of the linemen, but, Kai did a pretty good job of evading that guy because, Shane said that DeAndre Jules kind of blocked this guy maybe a little bit too much on that play, which pushed him out. But, I thought that's interesting, but it was unfortunate for them that they had the penalty that brought it back.
Well, it's weird, Alex and Joe, because Shane says that those kinds of things a lot. Like, we had this planned. If it was in this specific situation, we're going to do this at this time. And it usually works. And then he tells you about it in the post game. So they have a plan and they do see things. I don't know if when you go back to the offense and the play calls and vanilla, not vanilla, what are they doing? But like, at least in special teams, they have that kind of, viewpoint. Maybe it gets to that point in the game where we're waiting for this specific situation and we're going to run this play come hell or come high water, because that's what it seems like sometimes when you're just like, why are you doing this over and over again? But no, it was good. I mean, I watched that. I was actually leaving the stadium. We got back to the car and taking the little one home, and I heard, the crowd, and I said, that's a touchdown. And then I got on my phone. I was watching it on the way home, and I was like, well, it wasn't a touchdown, but it was a weird scenario that the touchdown almost happened in. But, look, maybe that's something they put on film. I mean, they do that every year in the first game of the season to put it on film so everyone has to prepare for it. And that can take a little bit of pressure off Kai Kroger. You can take a little bit of pressure off Alex Herrera, because you never know when there's going to be a fake and when you don't have, the rush and the blitz. So it was interesting to me.
Yeah, and speaking of special teams, I thought it was a pretty good debut for Alex Herrera. Like, I thought he was one of the bright spots, like 40 plus long field goals. He did miss the one, but, I thought for the question mark that was surrounding the kicker spot, I thought that was a pretty solid debut for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, huge debut from Herrera. And again, with Mitch Jeter going up to Notre Dame and Jeter having a great game in Aggie land, respectively himself. But yeah, huge for Herrera to step up. And then also too, I mean, everyone kind of thought it was going to be Mason Loves for Herrera to, not only silence a lot of the people who were like, all right, I guess we're, going to stick with the freshman. Apparently this guy's not very good. To be able to say like, nah, I'm the kicker. Like we got this, locking it in. Great job from him. Absolutely. Way to bring that up, Alex. Good point. Guys, we haven't really talked about the defense that much yet as we're getting through it. Debo Williams was a highlight, obviously, with the interception. Kyle Kennard also led the way off the edges. What were your initial takes on this defense's performance yesterday?
I mean, kind of what I expected, to be honest. I thought Alex, did Dylan Stewart start? I couldn't tell if he was on the field to start, but
No, he didn't.
He made his presence known. Kyle Kennard, wow. Defensive line looks great. Linebackers look great. I mean, we can talk about the 2 plays that Old Dominion scored on. The deep bomb where DQ kind of got out of position. Maybe, I don't know what the play call was. I don't know what he was asked to do. And then the quarterback scramble, which can happen at any time, just happened to go for 30 yards and a touchdown. But those 2 scoring plays were 1/3 of their total offensive yards. It was 108 yards, and they got a little over 300. So overall, like, yeah, you have those 2 miscues, but that's it. That's the only thing I can say that was a negative about the defense. They forced turnovers. You know, I said they were going to force 2. I think they forced 3, maybe more. I got to go back and look at the stat chart, but I just think the front 7 is very, very good for Gamecocks against Old Dominion. We'll see against Kentucky, but against Old Dominion, they kind of dominated.
Yeah, man. I know you and I both said that we thought there was going to be a special teams or defensive touchdown. Came very close on the first drive with Debo about getting in the end zone after he got that ball. But, I thought, one of the things we talked about in the preseason was the speed of that linebacker group. And I think we saw that on that first play, especially where Demetrius Knight goes and just runs down the running back in the flat on that little swing pass. And that was impressive and kind of just put Old Dominion behind the chains and then led to them forcing the fumble. But you mentioned that defensive line was the bright spot for that game. And this 2 edges, like when South Carolina gets, whoever the next 2 opponents and straight passing down situations, like Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard are going to be a problem off the edge for a lot of teams. Like Old Dominion does have some problems on the offensive line that looks like it's carried over from last year, but those 2 guys were a problem all night. And when you have those 2 going really well, it's going to draw attention to those guys and really open up the middle for the line or for the defensive tackles, Tonka, Alex Herrera, and those guys to really, get after it. And because I think they kind of fed off of that as well. But, as you mentioned, Old Dominion had a few big plays last night. And I think you expect that with their Tennessee-like offense, like they're going to hit a few big plays. But, I thought for the most part, the defense looked the part last night.
Yeah, absolutely. This defense, my lone complaint with this defense is that they were letting up a little bit too much in the run game. But again, I think you regressed in the run game. These linebackers tackle, man. And Martin Scott, Demetrius Knight, talk about DeAndre Jules as well. The 2 pit transfers were just studs, absolute studs. And then, I thought the linebackers covered the field well. Yeah, you don't want the running game going as off the rails as Old Dominions did. But, man, other than that, they look great in the passing game, minus the 1 DQ Smith error. But overall, pretty good game from this defense. And, the only thing that they need for them as a whole next week is some more points from this offense.
Yeah, and I thought, for the most part, defense was really good. The Old Dominion did have that little bit of a stretch. I think it was late 3rd, early 4th quarter where they were getting some ground in the run game. Like they had some holes, but, they, South Carolina kind of adjusted to that and, kind of locked it down and got the win for South Carolina.
I think the biggest thing for me was just, I did not expect a 19-16 game in the 4th quarter. And I don't know, tying this bow on the offense and defense, because I really don't think there's much to say more about the defense here. They did a great job outside of, those two plays. But I mean, did you guys, Alex, you were up in the press box where was everybody writing their stories, South Carolina upended by Old Dominion and kind of getting their juices flowing?
Yeah, when Old Dominion took the lead and you kind of just wondered, you're like, is South Carolina going to be able to get a drive going to put points on the board? But, Dylan Stewart helped that by getting the fumble. But I think, there a lot of people, and not just people in the press box, I mean, everybody was starting to wonder, can South Carolina get the ball back here and put a drive together? Because, quite frankly, you hadn't seen that yet in the game with their scoring touchdowns coming from 10 yards within. So I think people were starting to wonder, to be honest.
And they really didn't. They didn't put a drive together.
Yeah. Had the one drive that you got in the 3rd quarter that you got down to the goal line, but then was kind of derailed and, ended up only getting a field goal out of it.
Yeah. This offense stalled out big time in that second half.
Yeah, Joe, you're 100% on it. I mean, the offense really couldn't get much going, and you kind of had that, is this going to be Wofford? Is this going to be the Citadel? Is this going to be, these difficult games? And Look, when I posted on the Big Spur last night, just talking about this show because it's our first time doing this show, I said, phew, we'll talk about it, we'll fuss and discuss on Sunday night, and like I said, there were some good things that happened, and there were some things the Gamecocks need to work on. We'll talk about it, but the biggest thing for a Gamecock fan to realize is whatever you feel about Dowell Loggins, Shane Beamer, any player or coach on the team, like you cannot afford a loss to Old Dominion. So as much as it made you angry and it wasn't fun to watch and be a part of, I promise you, it's a lot worse than waking up on Sunday with an 0-1 record with a loss to Old Dominion. Like everyone says this and coaches say it, and you can say coaches are full of it in some ways, maybe sometimes they're not, but the most progress should happen from game 1 to game 2. And then when you get into game 4, game 5, game 6, now you have an identity and you start, setting the tone for what your season is going to look like. With the Gamecocks winning yesterday, I hate to sound like Dabo here, but everything's still on the table. And it would not have been if you started 0-1.
Yeah, if they ended up losing that game, we're sitting here having a whole nother discussion. Like, it's easier to sit here after South Carolina won to kind of break down what they did wrong, but it'd be a whole different discussion if they lost to Old Dominion yesterday, moving to 0-1 before Kentucky this week.
Yeah, some of my final thoughts here, and I had them all written down. I mean, I think the wide receivers need to play better, or Lenoris needs to throw better. I'm not sure which one it is. And, being in, the right situation, spacing, all of that, we'll see. First game jitters. I mean, you had 7 guys that called a pass for the Gamecocks yesterday. I predicted 8. So, I mean, they're still sorting this out. Defense is good. Lenore Sellers brings just a completely different element to the quarterback position than he did last year with Spencer Rattler. Like, I mean, Lenoris literally could go for 45, 50 yards and, blink and you'll miss it. Offensive line, I really just don't know what to think about them right now. I don't know. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that. I'm just stating the obvious that there were good moments, there were bad moments. Sometimes people had room to run, sometimes they didn't. And that could just be the first game. Defensive line is ridiculously good, I think. The depth is ridiculously good. One thing I would say, like DQ Smith had that, gave a big play, and don't know how or why or what the play call was or what his responsibilities were on that play, but that seems to be a recurring theme for the defense right now. It seems like safety play can be an issue. I don't know if moving Jalen Kilgore to safety would, remedy that, but DQ has earned the stripes, and I feel pretty confident with him because, safety and cornerback, it's kind of like if you don't hear about them, it's probably a good thing, and you only hear about DQ Smith or Nicky Memwari or the cornerbacks like when they give up that one big play. But usually that one big play seems to be a 60-yard touchdown that changes the game. So you don't want to give up those. But like you said, Alex, kicking game's okay. I think that this team is not as bad as it looked yesterday. Not surprised that going into Kentucky, they're, a 9-10 point underdog. That seems to be expected in my mind. But look, I think this team's going to look better than they did yesterday over the long haul, and just really everyone needs to pump the brakes just a tad. Like, you can still go down the fire beamer train or a hill. I don't care. But like there's 11 more games. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. And I mean, Matt, you kind of mentioned how, it seems like teams make the biggest step from game 1 to game 2. And, we're going to learn a lot more about this team week 2 because, you mentioned the offensive line. Like, those guys are going to be tested even more against this Kentucky defensive line and the front 7 in total. Like, we've talked about Deion Walker before. Like, a guy's going to be a first-round pick. It's an absolute problem on their defensive line. So they're going to have to block that guy. And they got some talented linebackers, too. The guy from Georgia, Dumas Johnson's a problem. And when you look at Kentucky offensively, defensively, they only gave up 5 rushing yards last night to Southern Miss. And I know their game was shortened because of weather in the third quarter, but they held Southern Miss to 5 rushing yards in the first half. So, they're going to have to bring it in Kentucky and would have to improve overall.
Yeah, most definitely. It's going to get interesting again because, the offense saw sink. This defense, didn't look great in past situations. I think, again, DQ, that one lapse, right? He's either going to learn from it and it's never going to happen again, or it's going to be a recurring thing that you just can't scrub out of the docket, right? And you obviously hope it's the latter one or the the first one. So, this defense should be all right. Again, I was really impressed with everyone. Tackling in space was so much better. Night and day difference last season, right? Minus, again, the couple plays where you were one-on-one out in the open field, which, is a coin flip to begin with. But I think you covered well. You were able to, just get guys down with dealing with an offense that's that fast-paced week one. Is always an adjustment. So they weren't, you can never be full ready for it as much as you train, as quick as you train. So again, I think, going into Kentucky, they're not going to be as fast paced. They should have everyone, again, fully healthy. So, you've got a week in practice to rep out whether or not you want to move DQ down or just figure out what you want to do at safety. Again, Kari Swain showed well at corner. Could you move him over to nickel, right? So there's a bunch of different things that you can do on this defense. I think we'll shore up the holes. Now, offensively, what is the offensive game plan look like next week? Guys, do you see them running quarterback as much? Do you see them, veering away from the run, trying to air it out more? There's a number of different ways I could see Dell going with this, but what do you guys think this offense looks like next week?
I think honestly, the offense is going to have to look different one way or another. You can't have, your stud tailback and your starting quarterback, who I still think is a stud, combining for 48 carries. That's just ridiculous. That can't happen again. And, there's going to be some coaching this week that says, hey, Lenoris, I know you're confident in your legs, but you can't run 22 times. I think that when you look at the design runs, maybe they were like 8 to 10 design runs, in my opinion, just watching the game and rewatching it. I don't think that it was, Lenoris go out there and run 22 times. But maybe the game slows down a tick for him, because Lenoris is a really good player. And I know that all Gamecock fans feel like they might have been sold a bag of goods that, they can't sell back. But Lenoris is a really good player, and he will be a great player for the Gamecocks. I go back to Connor Shaw and Charlotte against East Carolina, I think, and just looked like a deer in the headlights. And I thought Connor turned out pretty okay. Lenoris has everything that Connor has, plus a million not intangibles, I shouldn't say that, but athletic abilities, throwing the ball that Connor never had. But yeah, Joe, to your main point there, things are going to have to change. Maybe they go over the middle a little bit. They're going to have to do some quick crosses, something, maybe sweeps even to the outside. But I think you're going to see the Gamecocks still try and go set the tone against Kentucky and trust their defense. And it might be 60%, 65% run, but I don't think it's going to be Lenoris running that much. And to Joe's point a little while ago, you got to get all three of those running backs involved.
Yeah, I think probably, if I was South Carolina, I would just find any way to get him comfortable throwing the ball early in that game, whether that be swing passes. We kind of mentioned that earlier. We didn't really see any of that in this game. And I think that would help him just get into a flow, get confident. I think somebody in the chat mentioned earlier, where were the slants at? I think that would be a great way to just get the receivers' confidence and Lenoris Sauer's confident, because they're going to need the passing game in this one with how well Kentucky can play their run. So I think I would think that's going to be in some of the game plan too.
Yeah, most definitely. I expect it to be a little bit more of both. Right now, it's an SEC opponent, so you can open up the playbook a little bit more, as I expect Dowell to do. I'm sure yesterday was a little bit frustrating because of what he could show, what he can't, kind of thing. Because if you show your best trick plays in week one against Old Dominion, somebody's going to be ready for him, and then you have to generate new ones, and that takes creativity in off seasons and stuff like that. So we'll talk more about the Kentucky game, as well as give our players of the week after this quick ad break. You guys are watching the Rooster Rant. We'll be right back after this short message.
Welcome home. That's what the Gamecocks say, and so does nationally recognized the Barndominium Company, where they are building dream homes in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Their turnkey process can be custom designed and takes 6 months on average. Make your dream a reality. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. Thebarndominiumco.com.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Disaster comes uninformed. During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. It can become extremely difficult to bounce back to what you knew before. Having your home or office destroyed or damaged by water, fire, smoke, or mold affects your personal and business lifestyle. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. Resto Pros of the Midlands. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com.
What Right to Bear is we're an association of members across the entire country, and what we offer legal defense in the event of a self-defense case.
Nice.
So it's not insurance. So we offer an attorney in the event that one of our members might have some type of an accident. ProtectWithBear.com. We've got all of our social media accounts on the bottom of our website. We've got blogs, articles, detailed description of all of the coverages in depth. And, we'd love to have you come check us out and ultimately get the protection you need.
All right, welcome back into the Rooster Rant, wrapping things up here on your Sunday evening. Again, appreciate everyone joining us. But guys, players of the week, always a fun segment. We'll start, I guess, offensively. Who you guys got for your offensive players of the week? I'll let you guys first fill in behind.
I mean, Alex, I think there's if we're going to start this, I mean, Rocket Sanders is probably the only player on offense that you can even throw a dart on in this category. So
Yeah.
I'll go Rocket, but I do think that Norris is going to get better. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my most improved player for week 2 against Kentucky to Lenore Sellers. But MVP is Rocket Sanders this week. And God knows where the game
Yeah, I mean, I think
didn't have him.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, I think Rocket is the obvious choice there for offense. Like, just to shout out another player who I thought played pretty well was Dre Jacobs. Like, he had his moments in that game, and I thought there was a couple of times too where in that game where he was open, and maybe Lawrence just didn't see him. But I thought out of that wide receiver group, if anybody was going to that we could spotlight, it'd probably be him. So that's what I would go with.
Yeah, 100% with you guys. Obviously, I think it's the clear and obvious choice is Rocket, but Alex, I'm with you. Dre Jacobs, for having 2 catches and 59 yards, making an impact. Because these receivers didn't get as involved as we expected them to. So for that small of a sample size, yeah, Van lived up to all the meme hype and everything like that. Like it was fully lived up to. And I was impressed with him again. Could be a guy down the road that Lenore starts to trust. But there were also a lot of guys absent in that receiver room that you could have relied on a little bit more. Fully expected to see more, and fully do expect to see more next week out of that receiver room. But yeah, Rocket Sanders, the consensus offensive MVP. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, a little bit more variety here. What you got, guys?
Go ahead, Alex. I got a screaming baby, so I'll let you go for a second, then hopefully he'll be okay.
Yeah, obviously we got some more choices out to pick here. There's a couple of different guys you go with. I would go with Kyle Kennard. I think he was he or Dylan Stewart, I guess you could say, were like co-MVPs on the defense of this game. But Kyle Kennard was just all over the place and consistently putting pressure. But, I think you go in Dylan Stewart. But, Joe, what do you think on that one?
I'm also gonna go Dylan. I think he was really, really good. And I mean, every time I'm asked to give one player, I always give 2 or 3. So my secondary is gonna be Demetrius Knight. I was really impressed with him. I thought, him coming in, I did not think he's gonna be as good and make as much of an impact as he did. All the coaches this offseason were like, no. He's going to be really good. And turns out I was horrendously wrong. Demetrius Knight is really, really good. And turns out it was exactly what Debo needed. A little bit more depth in that linebacker room, proved to be all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dylan Stewart and Demetrius Knight, the sleeper.
Yeah, for me, I mean, Kyle Kennard, it's hard. The defense played so well outside of, 2 busted plays, in my opinion. I would give one to O'Donnell Fortune, because if he doesn't get that interception at that key moment, turnover. The game could have changed a lot earlier than it was 1916 in the fourth quarter. But you got momentum. The offense was not doing much. O'Donnell Fortune really did change that game with that pick. But that was totally a coverage type interception because the quarterback tried to push one in there, and O'Donnell pushed this guy out of bounds and recovered and came back and made that interception. Really, I would give it to the defense overall. They all played well. I can't tell you that the defensive tackles didn't make it easier for Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart to get there, to get those sacks and get those turnovers. I mean, overall, between the two, what was it? Let me look at really quick. I think there were 2 interceptions by Old Dominion's quarterback, and then he put the ball on the ground 4 times. Gamecocks came up with 2 of those, so a total of 4 turnovers in that game for the defense. Like they absolutely. I think they dominated. Like, I mean, I was watching my brother, who is like the biggest cynic in the world in the second half. And he was just like, we suck again, the water boy meme. And then he was like, I'll tell you one thing, the defense is pretty good. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
You got to have defense in the SEC. So we'll see what happens. It was Old Dominion. And I just caution everyone to take everything you saw yesterday with a gigantic grain of salt. Old Dominion was happy to be there. They almost pulled it off. And to their coach's point, the booing in the stadium, I understand fans were probably booing the coaching staff and not the players, but it's a really, really bad look no matter what happens in game 1. So try and keep a level head. I know it was hot. I know it was frustrating. There was a weather delay. I was frustrated even being there because outside the weather delay, you had a kid that was running around the entire stadium trying to catch him. Don't boo.
And kind of going back to what you're saying about O'Donnell Fortune, like that interception was a huge play because Old Dominion had a lot of momentum, was about to get more if they could get into the end zone there. And I thought that was just a huge play to stop that and give the ball back to your offense. And another guy that should probably be mentioned too is Jalen Kilgore. I thought he had a really solid game. I think he broke up 2 passes. I think that obviously had that interception right at the end, but he had a really solid game. And, just overall that defense, I think we saw just about what we expected. I think Debo Williams and Demetrius Knight have a chance to be really, really solid linebacker duo. And you throw Bam Martin Scott in there too, and that's a solid trio of guys, and Bengali Kamara too. So, I think we saw the speed and the depth that was talked about. I think that front seven's got a chance, and they're going to need to be really good against a solid Kentucky team here coming up.
Well, Alex and Joe, you go back to the best years under Spurrier, and everybody remembers Spurrier at Florida, and it was just points galore. But when Spurrier had his best years at South Carolina, it was based around the defense. And that's kind of the thing at South Carolina. Like, if you don't have a good defense, like, the offense is traditionally not going to be scoring 45 points a game, no matter who the coach is, including Steve freaking Spurrier. So I was very optimistic watching that game and looking at what the defense did. And I think the defense is only going to get better. I mean, they have so much depth. So, and it was Old Dominion, take it with a grain of salt.
And one of the guys, like you mentioned, you asked earlier, like if Dylan Stewart started, like Jatius Gear started that game and was in there on that first play that forced the fumble. Like, he was right there at the quarterback. So they have some serious depth on the edge. And, I think this defense has a chance to, if they're going to have success, like, they're going to need the defense to play like they did for the rest of the season, like they did last night. And, mentioned Debo Williams, like, he was one, like, he had another quiet, strong performance. I think he led the team in tackles, but this team, that defense, like as you mentioned, there's serious depth on there, and I think the defensive line is only going to help that secondary improve with the way they can get after the quarterback.
And think about this too, and Joe, I want to get your take on this, but we always talk about it. The first scrimmage of the preseason, defense is always better than the offense, and the offense comes around. You look at a game like this, and no disrespect at all to Old Dominion or Murray State or any of the teams that played SEC teams this week. And, I think the biggest issue that Gamecock fans have is they saw Ole Miss scoring 62. They saw, Mississippi State dropping 50 plus, giving up no points. I think Old Dominion's a pretty good team, especially in the Sun Belt. But, if the Gamecocks had won this game 55-19, what do you think the difference would be in the fan base?
Oh, it'd be completely different. Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you were right on hitting the nail on the head there, Alex. Like, the skies would be blue and everything. I mean, they'd be winning the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think
which makes it tough because they didn't do that, but there's going to be improvement. And if the Gamecocks have won 55-19, I'd be telling everybody on the show right now, okay, look, the offense is going to play SEC teams soon. So the offense is going to have to step up, but I'm not worried about the defense. I guess I'll kind of leave it there.
Right, yeah. If they scored 55 points, that means they ran the ball really well. The offensive line played well, and that they really put a complete game together. And they just, offense just wasn't clicking yesterday, and they weren't getting much of anything going. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a whole different conversation there if that had happened.
Yeah, quite literally. And I mean, defensively, boys, like, I mean, they're gonna need to tighten some things up, sure, but offensively, and kind of like Matt, like you were saying too, like, it is one of those cases where I also think too, it's just the defense is ahead of the offense, as is the pitchers are ahead of the hitters in baseball every year, right?
Yeah.
One of those things. But now the offense realize that they have to, pick things up quickly, because this schedule, as we all know, moves into very hard games very fast, right? October, as soon as late September, or mid-September, even with LSU, starting Kentucky as well, like, it doesn't get any easier. So this offense needs to pick up all the frustrations from yesterday, and there were a lot of them, obviously. As I'm sure they wanted to win this game by 3-4 scores, but you need to pick up those frustrations and really, really turn them around and fix them quickly, because you don't have a lot of time. Because I mean, if you continue playing bad and continue the bad juju offensively into these next couple of weeks, it's going to spiral quicker than you can think and quicker than you can imagine. And then it leads into the defense, and the defense can only, stop them so many times and yada, yada. And South Carolina knows how this goes you've heard it before, you've seen it before. So again, you hope it doesn't happen again, because it's a slippery slope in the SEC, which stinks.
Oh, absolutely. Really quick, just to do a quick recap around the SEC. I'm gonna go through the scores really quick. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, guys, but Missouri won 51-0 over Murray State. Arkansas 70-0 over Arkansas Pine Bluff. Oklahoma 51-3 over Temple. South Carolina 23-19 over Old Dominion. Big time win there. Georgia beat Clemson 34-3. Gamecock fans, just revel in that this weekend. Don't worry about the Old Dominion game too much. Texas beat Colorado State 52-0. Alabama beat Western Kentucky 63-0. Ole Miss beat Furman 76-0. Texas A&M dropped a home game against Notre Dame 23-13. Tennessee won 69-3. Florida lost at home to Miami 41-17. Vanderbilt off the mat beat Virginia Tech at home in overtime 34-27. Mississippi State 56-7. Auburn beat Alabama A&M 73-3, and Kentucky won 31-0 over Southern Miss in 3 quarters. So I think that all the excitement of the season coming and the first week of games and seeing those scores around the SEC has not helped Shane Beamer and the Gamecock coaching staff at all, because Gamecock fans want to be, SEC elite, and did not look that way on Saturday.
Yeah, and with just kind of looking ahead to Kentucky, the point spread's kind of out from a few sites. It's looking like they're going to be anywhere from a 8.5, 9, 10-point spread. What do you guys kind of think of that? Not that I don't think it's that surprising based on what went down in Williams Brice yesterday, but what do you guys think about that?
I've been watching it rise these last 12 hours, and shortly after, like as the Carolina game continued to be close, I watched that point spread just tick 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 all the way up to 10. Man, like, not good.
Yeah, it's tough, and we'll see. Alex, we'll have our Tuesday show, and we'll be able to talk more about this, and we'll see where the line should settle going into Monday, Tuesday. I will say, not having Gage Laverdane kind of impacted South Carolina and what they maybe wanted to do, because he is a spark plug. And you look at the passes over the middle, a slot wide receiver like Gage not playing, definitely impacted what they wanted to do, maybe could do in some cases. But you guys are going to think I'm absolutely crazy. But right now, I would take Carolina if you can get that 10.5-point hook, if it gets that high, because week 1 to week 2 is going to look a lot different. Gamecocks have beat Kentucky 2 years in a row. Had that bad stretch for like 3 or 4 years where they lost to Kentucky each season. But traditionally, South Carolina fares well against Kentucky. So seeing that line is kind of tough. Southern Miss is not projected to be a very good team. And I've said on our show, Alex, I said, if Kentucky struggles with Southern Miss and the Gamecocks blow the doors off Old Dominion, they might even be favored against South Carolina. And, I see Craig says here in the chat box, Kentucky has this circled. I promise you, Shane Beamer has this game circled. They are not fond of each other, Kentucky and South Carolina, for whatever reason. I've never heard the backstory. One day I hope we'll get that, Alex. But,
yeah,
Brock Vandegrift had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception on 18 passes, 169 yards. Kentucky did rush for 148 yards rushing in 3 quarters. The biggest issue for South Carolina against Kentucky, like this is very preliminary, but they're going to have to establish the run because that's where Kentucky is at their best, stifling opponents from running the football. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm just saying, if you can get that 10.5-point hook, I'd probably take that on South Carolina if that line keeps creeping up. And if it gets over 10.5, like I would take it. And South Carolina may not win, but you'll win money, and that soothes your soul a little bit.
The over-under is 45.5 right now on DraftKings, and I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, but that kind of says it right there. Like
I take that. I take that over.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to drop too, because just with the way South Carolina's defense played, they showed a lot in the Old Dominion game. It's going to be Brock Vandegrift's first SEC start. And, who knows with Chip Trayanum, if the Kentucky running back, if he's going to be healthy. He didn't play week 1, and I don't think it's certain right now if he's going to play or not. So, I think that's going to continue to drop. I think it's going to be, just as we sit here on Sunday night, a day after an Old Dominion game, I think it's got a pretty good shot to be a pretty low-scoring game.
I think the Gamecocks can make Kentucky one-dimensional, honestly. I think that they can shut down the run with that front 7, but we'll see. We got plenty of time talking about this, and I know Joe has a couple shows this week. Where we have a show this week. We're all going to be on Inside the Gamecocks this week. We'll talk all about Kentucky. I don't want to get too far ahead over our skis right now.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, we'll break it all down later this week. I'm not sure exactly what shows you guys are on. I got to get more familiar with the whole network and everything as we move along. But now a pretty good show tonight, boys. Appreciate the chatter and everything. Appreciate everyone joining us tonight. Any final thoughts before we close things out?
I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I know a Sunday night can be difficult, even though tomorrow is a holiday. But when you join a show like this, you're giving us your time, which is the most valuable thing you have, and we will never not appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed down the head. I do appreciate everybody being here, and we're going to be here every Sunday night recapping each game. So looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Most definitely. And Michael, we're working on a post-game show. We've got a full schedule. We will be live next week after Kentucky. Win or lose, we will also have a pregame show for that as well. But we'll drop the full schedule and line up for the post-game show for instant reactions and all that stuff as soon as we can drop the full schedule. So, but there will be a post-game show next week. So super excited to get that going, and can't imagine there are going to be, anybody's going to be unreasonable on that, like always, especially.
It's going to be perfect, man.
Really
it's going to be just rainbows and butterflies. Either way,
man, oh man. Well, we'll have to see with all that, but yeah, absolutely. Appreciate everyone tuning in tonight, and that was episode 1 of the new and improved Rooster Rant. So appreciate everyone tuning in, and see you all next week.
Have a good one, everyone.